introduce you to anybody here. This is Ron and Lori, for those that came in later.
Hi.
Hi, Ron.
Hello.
Sorry.
You're
Hi, Lori.
in Jackson,
Yep.
and Becky's in, where are you, Becky?
Fenville near Holland.
Okay.
And Deb Pennington, you're
I'm in Lansing.
in Lansing. Chris, you're muted. You're in Lansing too.
Yep, I'm Lansing.
And Doug, you're,
St. John's.
and Nan and Jerry,
Charlotte.
and Nancy's just joined us. And you're
Williamston.
in Williamston. So, and I'm in Lansing. So we are covering Michigan. We just don't have the UP here. Okay, so what was your question, Becky? I'm sorry. I just
Oh, just that explanation was just so helpful, because I think I've heard those ideas, but just to have it all right there. I don't know, you probably don't want to go back and say it all again, but if I could, if you
Sure.
could record this, that'd be
well,
helpful.
we can go through this again, because this is a big concept, and this is really the basis of so much of the metaphysics of unity. So the idea of mind as God mind is a very high vibration. It's so high that we can't humanly discern it. We sometimes intuit, I think, on the edge of it. And as that vibration slows down, it becomes the idea that we start discerning. We have those ideas in our mind until the vibration slows down enough that it's actually an expression, our own expression, or a physical manifestation. So I was relating it to quirks and quarks, that the physical, our matter is made of atoms, which have neutrons and electrons and protons. But now we have found out that beyond the neutrons and protons are vibrations that are called quirks and quarks. And quirks and quarks have no substance. There is nothing you can touch. It is just a movement of energy, which I even have trouble conceiving that how can something be if there's nothing that's solid matter. But this is just energy. And we all know we feel energy when we walk into a room. We feel energy in certain places. We feel energy from certain people, but it's hard to conceive of absolutely no substance, that everything is just this vibration. So the vibration at a very high level, if we start thinking of light that we can't hold, we can't touch, we can't put in a box, it's such a high vibration, it goes at such a high speed. And if you think of God mind, all the knowing of the universe, the infinite knowledge, it is at such a high vibration, it's higher than light. So for us to discern anything, it moves from this very high vibration of God mind into a slower and slower vibration as our discernment. So from God mind, from this energy without substance, that of what we think of substance, it slows down that we can see the light, that slows down enough that we can have an idea that we can put into words or feelings, until finally it comes out into a manifestation of either our own expression or matter. So that was it, kind of in a nutshell. And there. Okay, so here's another way of looking at it, the trinity of the egg, because an egg is a real familiar thing. So this takes it to a simpler form. So those are all the parts of the egg. There's the yolk in the middle, which has the potential to become life, we know. And then there is the egg white, which feeds the life, should it get, oh, we got company here, which feeds the life if it does get fertilized. Then around the egg white is the membrane on the inside of the shell. At the top of the egg is a little bit of air, a little breathing room, and then there's a shell on the outside. So let's take this egg and go into the metaphysics of it. The shell is the expression. That is the outer expression of a chicken egg or a duck egg, a bird egg. The egg white can be thought of as the idea, and the yolk with the potential for life is like divine mind. And, you know, it's not a perfect representation because I'm trying to give you something in 3 dimensions that has infinite dimensions. But sometimes it helps us to relate it to something that's common to us. So the shell the shell membrane, oh, yeah, the whole thing is God within the creator, this potential of life. The shell membrane, where are we? Is the false belief that we're separate. That thing that keeps us, if the inside is the God creator within, that little membrane between the shell and the outer is that false belief that we are separate from God, that we're separate from each other. And that little bit of air there up to on top, that place where you can breathe. I think that's a space for enlightenment. That's like our realization. We get this little bit of movement within our own mind. The expression could be ourself, could be the Holy Spirit, that movement of God within us, and the subconscious mind, the idea of the Son, the offspring of God itself, that Christ consciousness. Does the idea of the egg, does that help at all with this huge concept?
I like the first one better.
Okay.
I kind of like a combination of the two. It's an egg, and yet every part of that egg is made up of quarks and quarks, so every part is still vibrating.
Yes. Yeah.
That the whole quarks and quarks thing, I kind of had a bit of an epiphany while you were explaining that. That is why energy passes through us. So like when I do healing, I always saw it as me being kind of a vessel, almost like a tube, and it's not. It can just, that spiritual energy can just pass in between all my little moving quirks and quarks.
Almost
Now
like
I just need to,
osmosis.
so when I lose weight, am I going to have fewer quirks and quarks, or are they going to become more compact?
I don't know. I think they hang around, just wait to remanifest myself.
I'm thinking.
I don't think you ever lose the weight. It just stays there waiting for its opportunity to manifest again.
So as I walk down the street, there's a blob of fat hanging behind me. But yeah, that's pretty cool. That's how the energy would pass, because energy does pass through us.
You know what? I can relate that to a Christian prayer. Christ above me, Christ below me, Christ in front of me, Christ behind me, Christ within me.
Yes. Yeah. It gives you another meaning to that. I mean, we say behind, above, below, beneath, within, but there is no difference. It's
Yeah.
that in which we move and live and have our being, that we are all these quirks and quarks from divine mind that has slowed the vibration down enough to become made manifest. And we are so convinced that we are separate because I can touch me. I can't touch you guys because it's not safe.
Cooties are back.
Yeah, yeah. That's it. It's kind of interesting with the pandemic that physically being separated, we have to connect virtually, which is like non-physical, almost like reminding us time and time again that we're only energy. I mean, right now we're floating through something so that we can see each other.
Right.
But yet we're not physically there. Did we get so hung up in the physical and our separateness that something in evolution has put us in this place where we're being reminded all the time that no, we're more than this physical. We can still connect. We can feel each other, sense each other without touching each other. You know, we can be heart to heart, even though we're not face to face physically. You really got to work at it. I know my habit, my default is I want to sit around a table with people. I want to hug somebody. I want to shake somebody's hand when I meet somebody for the first time. Yeah, all those things that are my tendency of wanting to do. And I'm put in this place where I got to rethink all of that.
I wonder when maybe in a year or so, then when we the coronavirus is over, people will think twice about shaking somebody's hand.
Well, there may be a huge culture shift.
Yeah, I actually am seeing more people virtually because I know people in so many different places, and this technology has been available. We haven't really thought to use it.
Yeah, I find it archaic to make a phone call. I want to
Yeah.
see the face of the other person.
Yeah.
And Ron and Laura, you're welcome to jump in here. This is informal discussion. Any ideas you have or questions? And good thing about this stuff, there's no right or wrong answers. It's just how we're experiencing them. So
Right,
Feel free.
I agree that all this technology has really, I mean, it's forced us to learn something new, and I think some good is going to come out of it because we can connect with such a broader group of people than just our small communities.
Right.
Well, and I think Sharon, weren't you saying, I think, wasn't it Mother's Day? You were able to connect with your daughter who's in New Zealand, your sister in New York, your son in Canada.
and my
And-
brother in Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
And we hadn't connected like that because it was so hard to get together physically. So some of the limitations we had on our physicality, we're gifted in that we're reaching out in different ways. I just find it really interesting how the whole world is responding.
well, and I do Weight Watcher meetings via Zoom, and I find, and these are people that I don't know, I'm not doing, it's not in Lansing, they're people I've never met, except for the leader. And I find that people, number one, seem more focused. I mean, you're sitting there in front of the screen, although yesterday there was a woman, she's got her mask on and she's in the grocery store with her phone in a Weight Watcher meeting. And I'm sitting there thinking, hope she's making good choices. I wanted to ask her to show us everything she was putting in her cart. But for the most part, people are more focused because I'm not looking at everything going on around the room or if I'm looking at other people, it's just, you're all right in front of me. And at the same time, it's harder to connect because it isn't in person. So it's just different.
Yeah,
I agree with you as far as the you're more focused. I found, like, today I watched the Sunday service and I found that I was able to really concentrate. I'm more relaxed. I don't have to, like, think about having to
Hug
hug
anybody.
anybody or anybody's going to be looking at me, or it's just like I'm just there for that reason, to be spiritually fulfilled. So it to me, I get more out of it spiritually, not necessarily friend wise or socially, but spiritually I'm getting more out of it.
Well, I think another thing in the Weight Watcher meetings, at least, is it seems like people are more willing to be vulnerable because there's an element of not being
Protection.
physically present.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I feel more connected to them.
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
And their quirks and quarks.
Yeah, and as we're sitting here right now, we know there's Zoom meetings going on all over, all kinds of things, and cell phones, and those vibrations are all going through us too. God, if we could have a map of what it really looked like energetically as we're sitting here, we are a pipeline and conduit of all kinds of interesting things. NPR had a show on today talking about working at home, and they're finding that the optimal is some days at home and some days in the office, because there's that time where you need the brainstorming, you need to be present, talking with each other. Maybe you want somebody else's opinion on your work. the kind of interaction that only happens kind of casually. It's not as planned. Meetings are more planned on Zoom. And there's a lot of people that do really well working alone, that time alone at home. They can actually be more productive because they're focused in a different way. So we're getting this wonderful lesson in balance, you know, that we need time alone and we need time with others, and finding whatever that balance is for us. And maybe we got so off balance, it's like all of humanity just got forced apart so they could reevaluate how much do they want to interact with each other, how much time do they want to invest driving, being in social situations, not being in so. I mean, all of us have had to really reevaluate our whole life, what we're doing. Our schedules change, calendars mean nothing. I don't know. I really have difficulty remembering what day it is. It was only accidentally, Nancy, I remember that we had that meeting at the church because Chris said something to me. And I go, oh, today? And yeah, it's just a very strange, I find it strange. Anybody else finding it strange? Am I the only one?
Well, the whole day thing is not a whole lot different for me. Because I used to remember Thursdays because that was Weight Watchers, and Sundays. But other than that, you know, I'd wake up in the morning and go, okay, so it's not Thursday, it's not Sunday, so I'm good to go. But
I really noticed the missing of a rhythm. When I first went to California, I really missed the rhythm of the seasons. I had difficulty with that. I don't know, does anybody else find themselves living a rhythm?
I really need rhythm and routine. And, you know, we've been here 3 years now, and I had made a routine, and, you know, I made commitments. And so at first I had some really, really hard times and some meltdowns when when my routine just ended. I find what I've done now is I have really filled up my calendar with virtual things, and then routines here at the house that John and I do. Like we might have had dinner together before, but never 3 meals a day. Now it's 3 meals a day, and you know, it's a dog walk first thing in the morning, and it's watching the news at night. So I do feel better once I've set up another routine. I'm not a person that could live without routine very well.
I
It's
think
like
it
we've
is
had
about, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go on.
I think it is about finding a balance, whatever balance that you're off of. So for me, like I spent, and I didn't realize this, so much time mentally protecting myself from others that I'm constantly trying to protect my own space. And now that I'm able to be in my own space and calmer, I actually thought to myself, it's like, well, you know, I can go into a situation where there's people there and I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to be feeling like I have to protect myself. And so yesterday I had to go in for a lab test. And so I'm sitting in the waiting room and there's these 2 other women, and I thought, well, I'm going to start a conversation. So I actually put myself out there, and I actually started the conversation, and I started talking to them, drawing them out. And so it allows me to, that part of me was not balanced. And so now, because I am able to relax in where I'm at, I can extend my hand, make things better, communication wise. So I think it is about balance, and it just depends on where you were out of balance, which way you have to go.
I have found that the level of stimulation, what goes for entertainment is the level is very low. To have something unique happen, like, you know, there's a fire truck driving down the street and everybody goes out to look at it. It reminds me so much of like the 50s when life was very simple. And
Yeah.
you know, kids might do a parade down the street and all the neighbors would come out to watch. You had the time to do that. And it was just kids marching down the street, maybe waving some flags or having their horn or whatever. And so if you take that idea back to energy and speed of energy, it's just kind of interesting just to think about the whole shift. Like I sometimes wonder if that humanity has slowed down enough that nature seemed to have blossomed and taken up a lot more space. I don't think I've ever seen as many beautiful gardens around because we're home to take care of them. There's a lot of real happy animals around, both wild and in our homes because we're connecting. Oh, well, anyway, it's just, I wonder about the whole thing all the time. I don't know if if you guys are wondering about it during this, but you know, we're over 4 months into this now, of a different world. And I know I have a sense it's never going to go back to what it was, but there's something, we have a great opportunity to make something new. So if you go back to the whole idea of God mind, is this vibration that comes into an idea through our own minds, and our minds shape it by our past experiences, our knowledge, our preferences, our feelings, that as outer experiences are being changed, maybe we're changing the ideas that are coming through God mind, that maybe it's a little broader, maybe it's a little kinder, maybe it's a little more less defined. Like so many times, Nancy, you're talking about how protecting yourself, and we all protect ourselves just of some degree of space, that this is my safe space. I'm willing to let people get this close to me or this close to me, whatever that might be. And as things have shifted, everything kind of got relaxed. Those boundaries are different. And now we have these boundaries of the 6 feet. So it's like we're really giving ourselves a lot of space to reform whatever ideas are coming through. I would be really yeah.
If you take it back to the quirks and quarks, each of us is everything vibrates, and everything vibrates at a things vibrate at a different rate. Like I believe dirt is 7.8 megahertz. I passed that on in an exam. So so we are each we're still a bundle. So every one of us is this bundle of moving quirks and quarks, and each of those bundles is moving through space, which is other moving quirks and quarks, and we're moving through space less. So there's less disruption to those that are just supposed to be there in the air.
Yeah.
Hey, Sue.
Hey. I really like the quiet. You know, there's been times when I'd have the NPR on all day or the television on all night or music playing. And those times are just, you know, little, very small segments of my life now. And I think sometimes I would feel like unsettled, you know, in the quiet or just without something actually happening.
Stimulation.
Yeah, but now I like it. And we were talking about the 50s. I think that I was kind of having that experience because I kept thinking there's something very nostalgic about this, how I'm living. And I feel like I've done this before. And I probably did. When I was younger, I didn't have schedules and, you know, a million things going on all the time.
And when the outer energy, the environment that we're in is so highly demanding energetically, sometimes it's talked about that the soul is pivotal. It can look outward to the outer world and respond, or it can look inward and be the responder. But when our attention is drawn to the outside, this is what's driving us, the outer. Now that the outer has been calmed down, it's like the soul gets to pivot back inward to that Christ self, that divine mind, that divine consciousness. So instead of getting the frantic energy of the environment out here, we're connecting more to that divine mind energy, the light, that's beyond the light. We're getting like a pure connection, and it's a calmer, a gentler one. If we talk about God as the energy of love, of a divine love that is totally unconditional, totally compassionate, totally non-judgmental. And if we're getting more of that kind of energy as our driving force as opposed to the outer driving force, to me, it's just making a real shift in our consciousness, whatever name you want to call it. Call it the Christ, call it your divinity, that spark. Yeah, by any other name. Okay, back to some intellectual stuff. Go through here. I'll get back here to the. There we go. Your favorite book in the New Testament for any of you Bible readers or browsers, or maybe you've heard the name of a book in the New Testament. So the New Testament was written from about 0. This is on with our calendar. So do you have any favorite books? The short ones?
I just finished a study of Matthew, and that was pretty good.
Okay. Oh, Matthew that's part of the synoptics. There's 3 books that are really focused on they're presented as historical Jesus. They talk about Jesus' life, though they weren't historical. Each of them were written by different schools of thinking. They were written well after Jesus lived. Matthew was very likely written by people that came from a Jewish background, that it was a Jewish sect of the early group because of the number of references in there to just the way Judaism was done in the 1st century. Luke was probably a Gentile. He was a non-Jew, just from information that's not included there. And Mark, of the 3, was probably the earliest that was written about Jesus' life. And again, it was probably 30, 40, 50 years after Jesus lived before this was written down. So this is where we get back to that, how the stories grow, like we talked about the stories of Santa Claus and Christmas. We know there's this whole idea in the universe of loving and giving and celebrating. And it's easier for us sometimes to look at the idea of an egg than to think about the concept of the multidimensional nature of humankind and Christ kind and God mind. So that's I think, what the Synoptic Gospels talk about. And then the Gospel of John is sometimes called the Gnostic Gospel. Gnostic means knowing. That they write from a very different voice than the others. You'll hear that's where the I am statements come from. I am the vine. That we often hear quoted. And it's a very mystical book in the Gospel. So these 4 books, they all show like a different aspect of both the quote historical man and also that symbol that he represented of the Christ, this higher state of consciousness. Then the other books in the New Testament are really about the life of early Christians, called Christians because they're just talking about this Christ idea, this anointed consciousness. And those books are the Acts of the Apostle, which is what happens after Jesus dies. The letters of Paul, which are actually the oldest thing in the New Testament. The letters of Paul were written as early as the 30s AD or CE, because they're called Common Era. So think of the other books being written in the 70s at the earliest, maybe the 90s. The letters of Paul were written shortly after Jesus' death. So they're absolutely the written to the closest time of the historical Jesus, and the beginning of this concept of the Christ consciousness, the beginning of this concept of a new way of having a spiritual life that was much different from Judaism, was much different from the Roman gods, was much different from the Greek mythologies. It was just a totally new expression. And then there's the pastoral letters, which were written by different groups of people, different schools of thought, the Hebrews, Jude. There's anyway, there's a number of letters in the back that were written a lot later. So if you ever feel like picking up a book in the New Testament, know that the order that they're in has nothing to do with chronology. It has to do with length. which always amazed me, you know, to order. It'd be like doing your bookshelf to find books by the size of the book. So if it's got 500 pages, that goes before the book with 300 pages, goes to book before the book with, I don't know, 100 pages. And then the last book is the book of Revelation, which is tribute to John, which actually was so much of a political treatise that was written in code because the Jews were under domination by the Romans. And if they had written exactly what the Romans were doing to them, it would have been squashed. So they wrote it in this code of Revelation. Very rich book to look through for metaphysics and hidden messages is kind of fun. So the book that I sent you today is the Signs Gospel. And what this is, it certainly is it talks about all the signs that you could tell Jesus was the one. And in the Hebrew tradition, there was a thought that King David was the ultimate for the Hebrews. He was just the best leader ever. And they kept thinking that there would be another king that would come back, a redeemer or a savior, because they were always under bondage. They were always being persecuted for different reasons. They always had a really hard life, and they were waiting for this next leader to come back. And so how would you know who it was? Because there were a lot of people, literally at the beginning of the Common Era, there were thousands of people who called themselves a Messiah or a savior. And I don't think it was so much as a scam as a kind of an awakening consciousness, and each one was having these kind of new insights into spirituality, like, you know, human consciousness. It's not that it's like a rose bush. It doesn't get just one bud. There's a bunch of them that come and open, and each one is the essence of a rose. So I think humankind at that time was having some kind of awakening that the way they were doing things, these tribal wars, these the right and wrongness, that there was something more. So I think there was an evolution of things back then, and different people were having awakenings and claiming to be, and in a sense they were the next evolution of Judaism. It was these new ideas that were coming out. But they came up with, how would we know that this is the Messiah? How do we know that this is really the new deal, the new spiritual deal? And so when they wrote the different books that we see that were written in 70s and 80s and 90s, we suspect that there were some earlier books that were written that we don't have copies of. And these books were references, and they show up in the Gospels in the New Testament. You can kind of find different patterns in there. So one of them was the Signs Gospel, that there were all these signs. And I bet even if you haven't read the New Testament, you've heard stories of the signs. Jesus turning water into wine at the wedding. Jesus bringing somebody back to life. Jesus healing the blind, healing the lame. Jesus making the water be calm. There were all these stories that this is a sign that this is the person we should be listening to. And as a good Unity person, I'm always looking for signs. I prefer them skywritten. But, you know, you're walking down the street and all of a sudden you find something on the sidewalk and you go, oh, yes, this is a sign. And, you know, the universe is so magnificent. I really believe things show up to kind of open up to that vibration of divine mind, to give us that next idea. And sometimes it takes that little outer stimulation, the quarter you find on the ground, or the blue feather from the blue jay that just happens to be across your path. Or you look up and you see clouds in a shape that just all of a sudden gives you this image of, in your mind, reminds you of what you need, or you're looking for an answer to a challenge you're having. And there's a sign that shows up, a song comes on the radio, and something happens in our synapses that allows us to think outside of the box, where we've been hitting up against the wall to find the solution. Something happens to take us beyond that block that says, I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. So scholars, so the document that I sent you today, and it's got a lot of words in it, and I just find it interesting if we're into historical and how things evolved, that there was likely this gospel written that we did not have a copy of that was all about signs. It would be a bestseller today, I'm sure, especially around Unity folk, if we knew all the signs to look for, right? Anyway, that's why I sent it to you, because if you like to delve into that, you have it to read at your leisure. And I think this idea of signs is something that we're all looking for. We look for that guidance, however it might be. Sometimes we take a book that moves us, whether it be the Bible, whether it be Ram Dass's Be Here Now, whether it be a book of poetry, and you open it up to look at the words, to read, to help you have insights into something or to inspire you. Many of us that read the Daily Word, how many times have we said, how did they know I needed that just for today? Oh golly, I really needed to hear that word togetherness today. I really needed to hear that word guidance. And you swear they're in your head, that somebody's spying on you, and they did it 6 months in advance so they could put it in this daily word just for you. But it's like, we're part of this incredible tapestry that our mind, as it connects with God mind, is able to get the message it needs from the world around us, and we haven't been able to get it internally. I mean, it always comes from the inside, but sometimes the stimulation out here is so great that it kind of muddies the sound or clouds our vision to the signs or the still small voice that might guide us where we are, to that Christed presence. Does that make sense?
To me, it makes sense, but I also find that I have to be cautious that I don't. If I find a sign, I can make anything a sign.
Yeah.
And I have to be really cautious that I'm not using it to push my point of view. I mean, there have been situations where two different people who don't agree on something both see the same sign, and each of them sees that particular sign as validation for their point of view.
Yeah.
So is that really a sign, or is that just using airy-fairy language to make them right?
I believe that because we're all individual expressions, we each have our stories.
The ones who don't agree with me aren't expressions of Christ.
We so don't understand the infinite. And also, we don't always give credence to how much our personality can color. I mean, if we want to have a specific answer, any sign we will collect evidence to support the answer that we want.
Yeah.
Able to be so clear to get it unadulterated. It's like, if you went to a psychic or a fortune teller, a reader, and they tell you something, if you want to hear something, if you want to hear that your mother's going to be healed and everything will be okay, whatever they say to you, you will use that as evidence to support the desired outcome that you have. So to be able to hear beyond that, beyond our attachment to the outcome, to use the signs as guidance. There is no, the things I like to go by, does it do no harm? Is a really big one. If whatever guidance you get, is it something that does no harm? Chances are it's vibrating closer to that divine idea of love. Does it bring joy to others? I know being right usually gives joy to most of us on there. So finding what you're going to use as a measure for the signs, because the Jewish people had all these signs that they were just convinced would tell them, this is the next King David, this is our leader that's going to lead us out of bondage. And when we're looking for signs in our own life, isn't that we want to find a way to get out of our own self-imposed bondage, a way of thinking, that if a circumstance is holding us down, how are we going to escape that?
But then we put we color it with those feelings that we want to get out of.
Yeah, it's kind of a human cycle that we can get very caught up on until there's a
Did
pandemic.
you say
and
psycho?
yes.
Did you say? Did you say psycho or psycho?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Almost like it's a confirmation bias.
Yes. Excellent, Doug. Yeah. Yeah.
But I believe there has to be a way to have signs that don't have that. But, I've probably had moments when I'm there, but they've been few and far between
We
to be able
experienced
to be
this.
that clear.
We experienced this recently in our own congregation. One
Yeah.
person stood there and said that she felt that the Spirit had led us to move to another location. And I thought to myself, geez, I listen to the same Spirit she does, and yet I want to stay here, So, we were both listening to the same Spirit, but we had different points of view on what we thought our organization should do. And that was a tough time for me because, like I said,
So if we're all dealing with the same Christ consciousness, how does that happen?
Do you know how my connection is sometimes unstable on Zoom? Need I say more? I think, all our connection is sometimes unstable with the divine. And if it's not unstable, there's also some pollution that gets in there of our humanness. We all have things, we have preferences. We have very tactile things that give us joy. We have stories that give us rightness. This is the right way for things to happen. And we get attached to our stories. So boy, I think that's why the Dalai Lama is so revered. I've never seen a person who is so unattached to what is going on. The fact that he can talk about the Chinese who destroyed his homeland and kicked it. He is like a man without a country, and really you can feel he doesn't have any energy towards them, good or bad. There's just this neutrality. And I think Jesus was the same way, though there's records of him losing it at times. He did not like the money changers in the temple. The story of him withering the fig tree. We understand that from time to time, he lost his temper about things. But I think in general, something about him most of the time stayed in this wonderful neutral state that's very fertile. And the same way, and it's also nice, I always thought it was really nice to know that he wasn't perfect. Because if I'm going for a Christ in consciousness, I like to be able to role model after somebody who sometimes lost their temper, sometimes got angry, sometimes got tired and overworked and, fell asleep in the middle of a crisis. I found that a helpful part of the story. Anyway, where were we on that? So the neutrality of it allows us, the more neutral we can be, the clearer we can channel. So that's why we go into prayer as a time of discernment, to kind of get rid of all the jagged thoughts in there that are using up energy, creating chaos, creating attachment to the outer, instead of allowing us to be with the inner. I think we've all had those moments when you're just so at peace, perfectly balanced between the inner and the outer, in the world but not of the world. And in that moment, nothing phases you. There's just a deeper sense of peace than you could ever self-manufacture, because it's just being in a presence. Yeah, everybody knows what I mean.
I'm thinking it's when I'm sleeping.
Mm.
You know, that moment, just as you drift off and just before you wake up, there's that sometimes that wonderful moment of unattachment, where you get, finally, you've been dealing with a problem for days, and all of a sudden you wake up with the clarity of the answer, like, where the heck did this come from? Boom, there it is. We've been able to clear the rubble away, to clear that slower energy away. Remember, from God mind to manifestation, the energy keeps slowing down, keeps getting muckier. You know, like from even whatever's before liquid into almost like taffy. It's very sticky and slow, and you just sometimes had trouble moving through it.
Molasses.
Yeah, I even think about the toffee. You know, they show those machines that pull it. They keep pulling it and crossing it over. Like sometimes you just can't get forward. It's just so much effort.
So that's what Becky and Nancy both were talking about, being, and it looks a little different for each of them, but being in stillness. Actually, it's very similar. Being more in stillness is helping them just be centered. And when you're centered and grounded, there's a strength in that.
Yeah.
You can see clearer when you're centered. You can see where you are making, why you're making the choices you're making, and then you can correct. My
Have
opinion.
any of you ever done any like extra energy exercises? I remember doing this as a kid, where somebody would lay down, and you get, I think, 4 people around them, and you take your 2 middle fingers, put them under their shoulders, under their hips, on each side. Maybe you needed 5 for the feet, and you'd have them think of something really heavy, and you couldn't lift them, and then they'd think of feathers, and you could actually lift the person up. Or you
No.
Nope.
Okay, Sue's shaking her head. Yeah, and you're mind blown, because you can't believe thoughts can have that much of an impact on the actual physical weight of somebody. It's if we were together, we'd be trying this right now. Somebody'd be laying on
Oh
the
yeah.
and we'd be
Well, I
getting
always think of that
rounded.
Yep. Yep.
Feathers, feathers,
Go
feathers.
try it at Weight Watchers. They're doing live meetings now.
Yeah, so there are ways to actually, I don't know if proof is the right word, but to actually kind of experience the difference of the weight of our thoughts on our reality. And I'm amazed that, Sue, how old were you when you used to do that?
I want to say like 10, 11, 12.
Yeah.
At slumber parties, we would do it. We would just use our fingers. We wouldn't
Yeah.
just do a couple of fingers, but we'd use our hands. And yeah, that was one of the things we do.
Yeah. Doug.
I was thinking of the test where you do your shoulder and you push down with thoughts.
Yeah.
Muscle testing. Yeah, thinking a
Yeah.
positive thought, thinking a negative thought. And, you know, if you're doing it, you know you're not cheating if you're the one that's being done on. I mean, but if you watch somebody, you say, oh, they're just faking it. But it's really true. You just lose the strength and that arm. So we know that it's just, the work of Dr. Emoto with the water. Have you read his work, in Japan? And he found that with water, if you spoke words or pasted even the word on a container with the water in it, if it was hateful or really caused separation or whatever, that when they froze crystals in that water, it was all kind of misshapen and ugly. But if you put words like love or peace on it, and then you froze it, beautiful crystals. So if you haven't ever heard of Dr. Emoto, I highly encourage you to Google him and Google photos, so you can see photos of these water crystals. He's done it on lakes, he's done it, I mean, and the fact that we're all water, that's why I think it's so important. But I haven't done that here. I used to have words on all the water pipes in my house, love and peace, just to get that higher vibration.
Mm-hmm.
I knew someone who was getting chemo, and she had it on all of the vials of chemo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that it actually makes a difference, having a word on it. And we've heard about plants, if you talk to them nicely, or if you play classical music, how it enhances their growth. They are no different than us. Yeah, okay. I was thinking about some of the signs that was so important to the Hebrew people to attribute to Jesus as an expression of this Christ consciousness. And if you do read through the Signs Gospel, somebody's got a bird there.
I do, I'm outside.
Oh. Reading through the Signs Gospel, it's an interesting exercise to look at what the sign was and what that might mean to us personally. So, for example, a sign of Jesus walking on water. Personally, that might mean to us, it might bring to mind an ability to stay above the emotional currents in our life, to stay above the chaos that might be in the outer world. Or healing a blind man, if we look at that as a sign that this is the Christ consciousness, for us it might be meaning, wow, I really need the ability to be able to see clearly, like I know the answer is there, but I can't see it. The Christ consciousness healing our blindness so that we can see. So if you do read through it, think about it metaphysically, that all those are conditions within yourself, and that when we're in that Christed consciousness, we had this ability to rise above those challenges. Lisa, can you mute? You
know what? I'll go inside.
Oh, okay. Sorry. You don't have a mute button on there?
Yeah, I do, but.
Oh, sorry.
I'll just go inside. No problem.
Okay. Thanks.
Sharon?
Yeah.
Reverend Sharon, is that the document you're talking about? Is that the last thing that you sent us that says, who do you say that I am, or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is
Yep.
And I've always liked this picture. Jesus was a dissident because, I mean, truly at the time he was, he fought against the political rule. He fought against the organized Orthodox Church. You know, there's a sign, those stories, if they were ever written down, couldn't be told. But they didn't survive the Council of Nicaea in 400. So, but yeah, he was trying to, he was breaking the mold. Okay. So let's have some discussion about some of the Gospel of John. Let's share this. There we go. So in the Gospel of John, this is one of the Genesis stories. This is the fourth Genesis story in the Bible, how the world created. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. So it says, and the Word became flesh and lived among us. And we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. So metaphysically, what does that verse mean to you? And again, no right or wrong answers. This is like, it's a sign that we interpret where we are in the moment and whatever it vibrates with us. The Word became flesh.
I've heard an explanation that I guess made sense to me when I heard it. Was the Word the word is like a logo, what we would call a logo today, like
Logo?
a symbol of an idea.
A sign.
But, you know, for us to really take it in, we had to have that translated into a human experience.
The symbol, yeah. Yeah, the symbol. That's so we go back right to the start. How is Christ like Santa Claus? You know, to try to explain the essence of the holiday season, because this holiday season was based in paganism originally. But there's something within humanity, there's this archetype of wanting to celebrate the light in the dark. You know, the world gets darker and then the light comes back. Life seems to go dormant and then it comes back. You know, these same stories, these archetypes, there's something so inherent in our celebration of this kind of rhythm of life, this transition that's constantly going on. So, you know, we created a story around St. Nicholas who epitomized some of those characteristics. We also, all these different groups of people, the life of Jesus inspired them to something greater, I think, than even his life itself. It was that archetypal story of that divine within, this intimate relationship with God. Like this was a huge shift in thinking. You know, the gods of Rome and Greece were big statues, so powerful, all out there. And for Jesus to come up with this very intimate relationship, very different than, you know, something way far away. Yeah, I said the evolution of human consciousness, the fact that we would actually start getting into that idea with ourselves. And so then Christ is the eternal principle that as a perfect idea. So he was in the beginning with God. So that in the beginning was God, and he was with God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. The perfect idea. Think back to the vibrations.
I got a thought.
Yeah.
You know, for some reason, I get that tangible thing representing something intangible.
Mm-hmm.
Money is a tangible representation of a force that's more tangible of that from what is his name? Spiritual economics book guy.
Eric Butterworth.
Eric Butterworth. Money is a tangible representation of an intangible force. And there's many of those things, and so maybe something going to be flesh makes it a tangible representation of something that's not tangible.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Could you, I mean, money's a really good way to talk about it, because I often think, what would it be like if our economy worked by handing around our energy? How could I give you my energy? I can't give you a cup of light. I can't give you a box of love, the energy of love. And so we come up with, and you can really see how the energy slows down to become money. Because sometimes we forget that, I remember I was always told it wasn't polite to give money for a present, because it means you didn't think about it. But it's the same kind of, you know, but if the energy is love that's giving it, but if the outer symbol doesn't meet somebody else's expectation, what that outer symbol should look like, it's really no different than the difference in religion. You know, if Muslim doesn't look like what a Christian thinks it should look like, then it must be wrong, or the wrong thing to do. If giving money is different than giving a present that you went out and bought, or there was even those times when, you know, it really meant something if you made it yourself. But why? If you're investing your energy, however you're investing your energy. So whether it's the idea of the symbol of money as our energy, or the symbol of different religious organizations as our understanding of spirituality. Yeah, you're right on, Doug. forming the intangible. How do we grasp the intangible? And then another one with Christ is the perfect idea. One of the lines attributed to Jesus, the Father and I are one. The Father and I are one. And it reminds me of the Gospel of Thomas. It says, pick up, split the lumber and I am there. Lift up the rock, I am there. The Father and I are one. Like how does that speak to you for the Christ consciousness? We lost Debbie. What does it mean?
Is that like looking at your garden? And I mean, I almost would weep looking at a garden thinking, I put this seed in this dirt and it's going to be this big, beautiful thing that's going to feed us. And that is not by our power. I mean, we might help it along, but the very essence of what makes that happen is God. And God is there in everything. But I just remember thinking that about gardening at one point in my life.
Or looking,
Sharon?
yep.
Yeah. On last week's class worksheet, the first lesson affirmation is something I've struggled for a long time with. I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. My son and I had a long discussion many years ago about that, because I said, I don't need to go through Jesus because I go straight to God. I still have trouble with this statement. Can you help me with that?
Yeah. Remember I told you there's 4 gospels written, different schools of thought, different experiences with understanding kind of the archetype of the Christ. But for me, the key is the I am. You know, when Moses asked God what God's name was, I am that I am. So I am the way, the truth, and light. I am the essence of God within us. That unnameable is the way, the truth, and light, being in connection with the unnameable. It's not, this is where the confusion gets between the Christ and with Jesus. Okay. That Christ is consciousness, Jesus is the historical man. But the Gospel of John, this is one of those I am statements. I am the shepherd, the garden gate, there's a lot of I am statements there. I am the vine. It was in the mystical aspect, that greater I am aspect, like the burning bush. So Moses says to the burning bush, who's talking to Moses, saying, you got to do this for your people. And Moses says, who do I tell them told me this? And he goes, I am that I am. So if you think of the I am, we do affirmations in unity. I am. I am healed, whole, and healthy. I am relaxed. I am
walking down the street talking, and I'm wondering who they're talking to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yet another example of being unstable.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I could be a sign for you all. I was unstable and I came back. So, now you're talking about that with that confusion between Jesus the man and Christ the consciousness is one of those things that, unfortunately is used to divide people as opposed to bring together in a sense of oneness. One of the things I handed out to you in the handouts, there are 2 articles written by Tom Harper, who wrote a book called The Pagan Christ. And he's just an excellent scholar. In The Pagan Christ, he calls it that because the idea of the Christ actually preceded Jesus. Last week, we talked about the Old Testament, how there was these early ideas of the Redeemer, the King, the the savior of sorts, went back, 5,000 years, well, thousands of years before Jesus. So when the Christian church started forming, the Pauline church, they didn't like that a lot of their ceremonies were similar to the pagan ceremonies. The celebration, Jesus' birthday is right about the time, the shortest day of the year. It was a pagan celebration. Easter was a pagan celebration. So they wanted to distance themselves from it. So they started making special meanings, making special signs, Jerry, like you're talking, was it you, Jerry, talking about, or Chris, that we have these signs that we can interpret the way we want to. So they would use his interpretation to separate those awful pagans that didn't believe like they did. And really, this is the true meaning of that holiday. So he wrote a marvelous book about that, which really takes you back into that higher Christ consciousness. As that, I think of the Christ consciousness as that place where we all connect as humans having a spiritual experience. That when we're in that vibration, you really sense there is no separation. There is no right or wrong. There's just that sense of being in the oneness. But then religion comes in and goes, you're in and you're out. You're in and you're out. You have to do different rituals. And we all experience that when we're ready for it. Like, we were talking at the beginning that we've had our routines and this busyness and we needed this outer stimulation. And that was okay for the time. That's where we were. And then the world changed. And we're seeing another way of doing it. And none of us know which is better. We just know which is right now. And we know that they are both human experiences. And they are both rich in gifts and rich in areas that we can be called to grow. So if you do have a chance to read those articles, if you're interested, it just may give you another perspective on lines like, I am divine, I am the way, the truth, the light, no one comes to God except through me. Just another perspective of, how things are. Okay, well, we're getting close to the end of our 90 minutes together. Okay. What I would suggest if you would like to have a more conscious experience of the Christ, is that you take an egg. It could be hard-boiled, or it could be another object, but we talked about an egg tonight. And write on the egg, my life is Christ-centered and God-controlled. My life is Christ-centered and God-controlled. I'll share that so you can see it if you're visual. And to keep that Christ with you all the time. This is a reminder that my life is Christ-centered and God-controlled. So I said it could be a rock. Maybe you like to carry a rock with you. An egg makes you very conscious because you don't want to break it. You become very conscious of it. You'll find inventive ways to carry it, but it could be a rock. I would take something with a little more substance than a piece of paper. And it's like, how do we become more aware of that higher level of consciousness within ourselves? Like we know it intellectually, and then we spend most of the time forgetting it, feeling maybe the limitation or feeling the struggle. During the course of the day, I mean, how many times do I consciously remember I'm one with all of this? I am part of that beautiful garden that's growing at Becky's house. I am part of that bird that's flying through the tree without a care in the world. I am part of all that's happening, all of it. So my life is Christ-centered and God-controlled. And to see what happens when you carry it with you. It's like those going through a 12-step program that carry their one-year coin in their pocket. It just reminds them of where their new thinking is, where their headspace is at. It's just a tangible reminder to kind of keep us grounded in a new way of thinking. So as we come to the close, let's just take a moment and close our eyes again. Don't really have time for, I'm thinking I may tape a meditation on this. then you can use it anytime. I'll put it up on our Facebook page so you can have it. But let's just take a moment to close our eyes and just let ourselves feel that idea of my life is Christ-centered and God-controlled. My life is Christ-centered and God-controlled. The Father and I are one. The creative force and I are one. I am now in the presence of pure being and immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love, and wisdom. I am now in the presence of pure being and immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love, and wisdom. I am now the presence of pure being. I am expressing as life, love, and wisdom. My life is God controlled. My life is centered in the vibration of the Christ. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the light. And so it is. Amen.
Thanks, Reverend Sharon.
Beth, thank you.
Thank you.
Lori, so nice to meet you.
It's nice
Oh,
meeting all you guys too.
Who's the puppy?
This is Billy.
Hi, Billy. Dogs are always
Billy.
welcome at the class. I had a cat in here before. I guess she got
There-
bored and went away.
There was a picture of Billy on Facebook this morning, and the caption said that Becky was trying to teach him how to dial 911.
That wasn't me, that was John that wrote
John
that.
did it. Of course, John did it.
Wow.
Okay, well, everyone have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.